Okay guys, before we get into this video, I'm actually trying to see if we can hit 100,000 subs before the end of this year, and based on my analytics, virtually none of you guys are subscribed, which is totally fine. I get it, I don't really subscribe to channels that often. But if just half of you or so watching this video right now went and subscribed, I'd probably get to 100,000 subscribers. So if you want to support the channel for free, just hit the sub button and you could even turn on notifications just so you know right when I upload. Okay, enough of that. Let's jump into the video. Many riders of the middle-aged kind will tell you that the 90s was, for them, the very peak of motorcycle production. Of course, those of a slightly older variety, many of you guys who watch my videos, may point to the 1960s as the pinnacle. And this all comes down not only to your age, but also to what kind of motorcycles you like to ride. If you're more of an off-road guy, you might point to the 1970s and the massive growth of motocross and supercross riding. And of course, there's also all the incredible advancements through the 70s in reliability for motorcycles. But if you do think that the 90s are sort of where it's at, there's a good chance it has absolutely nothing to do with the motorcycle that we're talking about today. Through this decade, most of the motorcycle manufacturers were dumping millions of dollars into sport bike and even superbike development, and it was incredibly competitive, primarily but not solely among Japanese companies. Making the fastest, most advanced sport bike in the world and winning on the track really was the future in many of these companies' minds. More power and better handling was really the name of the game. Also, looking back, these are some of the last days of the truly analog motorcycles before not only rider aids, but even things like fuel injection and ride-by-wire and really just the computerization of motorcycles as a whole. But leave it to Honda, forever the company with the most diverse lineup of motorcycles in the world, amidst this race to advance and make the best sport bikes in the world. Leave it to them to decide to once again take another stab at their decades-long pursuit of making the very antithesis of a sport bike. And in this case, it was called the Easy Cub, or Cub. Not sure why it's in quotations. In my last video, I covered the development and history of the Honda Super Cub, dating all the way back to the 1950s. This became not just Honda's best-selling motorcycle of all time, or even the best-selling motorcycle of all time. No, it is the best-selling vehicle of all time, period. And the reason is simple. It was developed to have a new level of utility and approachability, and because of Honda's genius in making this motorcycle really the perfect, simple two-wheeler with innovative features like the semi-automatic centrifugal clutch, well, they sold over 100 million units in total from 1958 to today. So when Honda decided to call this odd little bike the Easy Cub for its release in 1991, you can bet that it really had big shoes to fill. Easy Cub implies an even more innovative approach to, well, approachability. The Easy Cub was not the Super Cub, it looked nothing like the Super Cub, and wasn't even meant for the street. This was an off-road machine, not exactly a dirt bike though, but not really a full-blown enduro either. And in that sense, it was sort of more in line with Honda's heritage, making simple trail bikes dating back to the 1960s, but the thing is, it looks nothing like a typical trail bike or dirt bike. Why is that? Well, the initial intent behind the Easy Cub was, get this, a crossover between a motocross bike and a scooter. There have been quite a few crossover motorcycles, from sport cruisers to, again, street legal enduros to, sport tours. But a motocross scooter might be one of the oddest crossovers in motorcycle history. But when you really think about it, it's not that crazy. For Honda, there was a simple reason to make this kind of motorcycle. Dirt bikes are tailored for off-road use with things like knobby tires and more sophisticated suspension. Scooters, on the other hand, are the single most approachable form of two-wheeled travel available, from their lightweight nature to the simple fact that they're fully automatic. So for Honda, the idea was simple. What if we could bring the usability and simple, unassuming approachability of a scooter to the off-road segment? What if we could make a motorcycle that has all the best parts of a scooter combined with all the best parts of a dirt bike? The Easy Cub made its first public debut in 1990 at the Tokyo Motor Show, alongside lots of other futuristic motorcycles, including Yamaha's radical concept bike called the Morpho that featured a new piece of suspension tech called Rad Suspension. In a sense, the bike fit right in at that year's Tokyo Motor Show. Now let's start with the obvious, which is the overall design. Often we talk about motorcycle design, and we sometimes think of it as being kind of separate from the mechanical parts. Almost like there is the look, the style per se, and then underneath all that, there's the stuff that makes it work. But Honda has always been great at integrating all of this into one cohesive piece. Design is everything. It's the whole motorcycle. It's the frame, it's the engine, it's the bodywork. It's all connected and it's all design. And that's really no different when it comes to the Easy Cub. This rather odd look is there for a reason. Starting at the center, the Easy Cub wasn't powered by the traditional Cub's 4-stroke single. Instead, a torquey 90cc reed valve air-cooled 2-stroke was chosen, and it was paired to a variable ratio automatic transmission. Essentially, you didn't have to shift. Not even like Honda's other Cubs where, you have the semi-automatic transmissions. On this bike, you just started it, hit the throttle, and went. Honda decided to not only give the little bike an electric start, it also had an automatic clutch and an automatic oil injection system, eliminating the need to premix the gas. Now, underneath this bodywork, which we'll get to in a moment, there was a simple, fully enclosed but traditional tube frame paired to, again, a traditional front fork suspension in the front with 3.9 inches of travel, and then monoshock suspension with a swing arm in the rear, and that had 4.3 inches of travel. So you probably weren't going to be jumping this thing, but it was plenty for, just a runaround off-roader or a trail bike. Most of the primary mechanical components of the Easy Cub, though effective in combination, they were really nothing new, and this helped to keep the overall cost down of the bike. Now, the bodywork was quite futuristic to most at this time, but it served a greater purpose than just looking like something out of the future. Mainly, the overall vibe was meant to really be unassuming, which it certainly was. It also did make for an incredibly lightweight package. Actual specs on this bike are somewhat difficult to find. We do know from this ad that the rare 50cc version of the Easy Cub, which had a short life, that bike had a dry weight of 183 pounds, so we can assume the 90 would be somewhere in that range, probably a little bit more, but certainly under 200. Now, that's not quite as light as some of Honda's older trail bikes, but when you factor in the fact that this bike had things like electric start, it's really pretty solid. The rather odd front fender was functional as well. Again, beyond just being cute, it had a nice little compartment for snacks. I like to go on snack runs rather often, like where you're about to watch a movie or something, so you run to a gas station to get, snacks. Well, this would be the perfect snack run bike because you could just throw it right in the front there. Now, that same Easy 50 ad claims an approachable 29.5-inch seat height, so from what I can tell, this bike would have the same seat height, but it also has a solid ground clearance with a steel skid plate, hand guards, a sealed rear chain drive, and knobby tires, so the off-road intentions are pretty obvious. And it really was a capable bike. These features like a sealed drive also added a level of safety to this bike. These kinds of things just weren't on small bikes like this. It was really the most put together tiny motorcycle that the world had ever seen. Now, the more you understand about the Easy Cub, the more you can really see the vision. This truly was an off-road scooter, and maybe one of the most impressive and innovative scooter motorcycle combinations in history, because though, a scooter motocross bike might be unique, there have been lots of attempts at bringing these two worlds together, and in my opinion, this is one of the coolest. Now, as if the Easy Cub wasn't interesting enough, there was actually a model that came out of this model called the Easy Snow, and that was perhaps even more radical. The Easy Snow was basically just an Easy Cub, just without wheels, and instead, up front, it had the cutest little ski with a snowmobile-like track set up in the back. Now, this is incredibly rare. Some 250 to 300 models were sold in Japan. If you find one of these, and it's an original, it's probably worth a lot of money. This was also just a Japanese domestic product, though elsewhere people did make kits so that you could turn your Easy Cub into an Easy Snow with ease. When Honda designs a radical motorcycle like the Easy Cub, you really can tell what they're picturing. New riders all over the world, just putzing around trails or in their backyard, on Easy Cubs, ultimately a change to the very landscape of off-road riding. And of course, there would then be all sorts of new variations of Easy Cubs that would come out of its success, and those riders would be laughing and smiling and pondering their new motorcycle life, where they only buy Hondas forever, and they always remember the good old times when they found this new life on that strange little Honda. And of course, Honda can dream of these kinds of successes because they've had those kinds of successes. Think about the original Honda Cub and its offspring. It was that exact scenario. But honestly, none of these things happened. For whatever reason, this bike never had the level of worldwide success as an off-road option the way that Honda certainly envisioned. You can still find Honda trail bikes from the 70s for very little money in pretty good condition because they're still everywhere, despite many of them getting absolutely destroyed, but not so with the Easy Cub. There's a reason they go for like over $7,000 in good condition. It's because they're incredibly rare, and that's because they never sold the way that the original Cub did. So why did the Easy Cub live as long as it did? When Honda has a flop on its hands, they usually drop it in a year or two after its release and just kind of move on to the next thing. This is something they've always been great at. They know when to give up on a new model and just make something different. But this bike had a nice long run from 91 to 96. It really wasn't a flop. The Easy Cub, though not exactly proving to be the ultimate dirt bike for new riders like they wanted, had found a different home, and that home was on the track. That's right, Easy Cubs proved to be incredibly fast and agile, and thanks to their lightweight and aerodynamic features, they were impossible to beat in racing. Okay, that's actually not true. No, the Easy Cub found its home at the track, but not on it. Rather, in the pits. It would prove to be the ultimate pit bike. All the things that made it great and easy for new riders made it perfect for the pits because there's no better way to get around really any part of a racetrack besides the track itself than on a small little two-wheeler like this. This is why tiny mini bikes have always been the pit bike of choice for teams. I mean, even if you have zero experience riding a motorcycle, you can jump on a mini bike or on something like this bike and have no problems. Because there is no shifting. It's like driving, a little Razor electric dirt bike. And with it having, a bigger engine and more capability and just being super reliable, it was better than a mini bike. It was kind of like a mini bike on steroids. And so even Honda would use it officially for their teams in the pits because it was just so great for getting around. Now, it's important to understand, looking at this bike and really many others that came out at this time, this was an exciting time of transition for the automotive industry as a whole, but especially for the motorcycle world. There was just a willingness to go above and beyond with new technology and a hope and desire for new, entirely different kinds of motorcycles. As much as most of the attempts to really make motorcycles of the future from the 90s, most of them ended up being flops or never got made. And yes, even though the Easy Cub ultimately wouldn't change motorcycling as we know it, it's hard not to admire the spirit behind motorcycles like this one, a spirit that we just don't see in most manufacturers today. In many ways, the Easy Cub was the true spiritual predecessor to the newer Honda Navi. That bike, too, is a scooter motorcycle combo, also powered by a small engine with, a fully automatic transmission. And the intention behind it is, again, a new level of ease for the uninitiated to bring in new riders. When you look at the time in which this bike came out, a time when bigger, faster, more advanced, all of that was really everything, it's so crazy that Honda put so much work into a bike like the Easy Cub. I mean, this bike was being developed by the same company under the same roof right there alongside motorcycles like the iconic Fireblade. I'd imagine that the team that was working on the Fireblade probably sat at a different table in the Honda cafeteria than the team working on the Easy Cub, and they probably picked on him and shoved him into lockers and stuff. Okay, I don't know if that's true, but you get the point. Honda's ability to build so many different kinds of motorcycles and develop so many different kinds of projects and keep going even when things don't always go their way is really what has made them easily the biggest motorcycle manufacturer in the world. So as much as odd little bikes like the Easy Cub come and go, they really have their place. Not every single project ends with 100 million units sold, even if it does bear the name Cub. Alright guys, thanks for watching, and thanks for all the love on the videos lately. Again, don't forget to subscribe if you aren't already subscribed, and you can even turn on notifications so you know right when I upload. Alright, we'll see you guys in the next one. Ride safe.